This is Catholic Forum. I'm Bob Krebs. Leila Marie Lawyer is a wife, mother of 7, and grandmother of many. She lives in central Massachusetts. She entered the Catholic Church in 1979, the year she married Philip Lawyer, noted Catholic author and editor of Catholic World News. Leila is a fellow of the Center for the Restoration of Christian Culture, a project of Thomas More College of the Liberal Arts in Merrimack, New Hampshire. Leila is representing Sophia Institute Press and their new book, St. Hildegard's Garden, Recipes and Remedies for Healing Body and Soul by Paul Ferris. I'd like to welcome to Catholic Forum Leila Lawyer. Thanks for being with us today, Leila.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So, what did we miss on your bio? What did we leave out? What would you like to tell us about yourself?
Well, I mean, it's pretty thorough. I'm somebody who raised my children and got into blogging because of realizing that the young moms were maybe making some of the mistakes that I had made in the era of the rise of feminism. And so I turned to trying to talk about homemaking and, kind of getting away from the feminism that has been taking over our culture, and also writing about homeschooling. And so that's how I got my start in blogging. I kind of just dove in and ended up having a blog that I guess they tell me is kind of popular. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And then writing about lots of things. And as my children have started having children, and after, and as I've over the years gotten more interested in gardening and taking care of the family, that has always been an interest of mine. The idea of the medicinal herbs has been capturing my interest more and more, as I think it has for others. So Sophia Press asked me to write the foreword for this book, and Hildegard is a saint who I've followed ever since hearing of Pope Benedict's canonization of her, which actually she's a 12th century saint, but he canonized her and made her doctor of the church in 2012.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So that took a while.
Yeah. So tell us about Saint Hildegard.
Yes, she's a truly amazing person and figure, and I think for the woman who would love a role model who is both spirited and loyal to the church, who is analytical, intelligent, and perceptive, and who also accepts the hierarchy of not only the church but of being, and who is a religious, a mystic, an abbess. Saint Hildegard is just an amazing model. And when Pope Benedict made her doctor of the church, there are only 4 female doctors of the church. And personally, I don't like the DEI approach to things, the sort of like, now we're gonna give the ladies their part or whatever. So I was a little skeptical, but I should have trusted Pope Benedict more, because indeed she is on her own merits somebody who has something very deep to offer to the church. And it's very interesting because she was Benedictine through and through. She actually was taken to the convent as a very young child, and she was imbued with the Benedictine spirit, and then of course became an abbess of the institute, and so had the responsibility for taking care of the nuns but also, as was much more the case in that time, of the whole community. But then, even more so, she was someone who she wrote to, had correspondence with many important figures, including popes, bishops, and emperors. And they very clearly respected her and admired her and entrusted her uh, with their problems and followed her advice. So she is just an amazing role model.
Now, the book was written by Paul Ferris, who is French, and so we don't know exactly how the book came about, but it was obviously it was translated to English by Sophia, and
Right.
it's a great book. So, for those of us who aren't familiar with the book, kind of walk us through the book. What will we experience in it?
Well, so first of all, the book is I think lovely because it's kind of a coffee table book. I have my little bookmarks in here, but it's a book that is beautiful for leaving out on the table, maybe putting next to a little bowl of flowers and having your cup of tea, which not every book that is about medicinal herbs and culinary herbs is something that you would necessarily just put out. And so I do like to say that because actually, I've had readers tell me that their daughters, their children, their teenage children, have picked it up and have read it and been interested in it, which I think is, from the homeschooling perspective and the family life perspective, I always am looking for books like that that the children will be interested in diving into. And so the book has a foreword written by me about how to approach St. Hildegard and maybe leave aside some of our modern notions that prevent us from learning from her. And then it has an introduction from Paul Ferris. And I think, just like me, he was somebody who, possibly was spurred on by Pope Benedict's move to canonize her and make her doctor of the church. And so he has a biography of her. There are illustrations of for instance, of the abbey, so old illustrations, and then he talks about her 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 work in philosophy, her work in theology. Of course, she was also a composer of spiritual sacred works of chant. She was a poet. I mean, she was truly an all-around amazing person. And also her medicinal work, in which she takes the knowledge that is passed to her from antiquity and really systematizes it. And then the book goes on. The main part of the book consists of beautiful illustrations of plants so they're vintage prints. And I think that this is so interesting because so often, I have found this very often, that if I look something up online, let's say I want to look up almond, I'm presented with a lot of photographs, and that isn't always the easiest way to identify the parts of a plant, by looking at a photograph. And so these prints are great because they show you the leaves, the roots, the stems, the flowers, in this case, the nuts, so that you can really identify for yourself what it is that you're looking at or would be looking for. And then there is a description, and then there is usually a quote from St. Hildegard that tells us what she thought about and used the plant for. And that takes up, as I say, most of the book. So there are many plants with these beautiful vintage illustrations. And then the next part of the book is remedies from St. Hildegard. And then the last part of the book is recipes. And recipes that she would have used, and also recipes that the author um, offers, just which I think are in keeping with Hildegard's ideas. And then there's a bibliography and an index. And so it is a useful book. I mean, I think it's interesting because probably most of us who have gotten interested in medicinal herbs have maybe a volume that's very thorough in terms of, you know, an encyclopedic offering of what to look for. But this book offers us more of a perspective from the idea of the Catholic view,
Hmm.
the natural law and spiritual idea of how to approach the body, how to approach illness, how to approach the remedies, but from the perspective of faith, which
Well,
I think is important because some of these other things do not have that and do not emphasize the things that Hildegard emphasized. So,
my guest today on Catholic Forum is Leila Lawyer, and we're talking about the book St. Hildegard's Garden: Recipes and Remedies for Healing Body and Soul by Paul Ferris. It's amazing that the remedies that are over 1,000 years old can still actually be relevant and work today. What are
yeah.
some of your favorite remedies from the book?
So, well, to your point about, these 1,000-year-old remedies working today, well, let's just say that these are remedies that have always been known and that only very recently have been shoved aside. The industrialization of the pharmaceutical industry is only about not even half a century old, and really because of the monetization of remedies, it thrust aside the older knowledge. But that older knowledge was known to be effective and was even, I mean, even an American physician in the 60s would have had a volume on his shelves
Mm.
that would have been, here are herbal remedies that you would use to help your patients. And certainly pharmacists and pharmacology would have emphasized these remedies. So it's not so much a case of, oh, let's get these quaint old things and dust them off, as let's maybe
Rediscover.
rediscover and not be so overwhelmed by the idea that, oh, we have to pay a good amount of money for something that comes in a bottle, in a little, you know, in a little bottle that you buy at the pharmacy or get or order on Amazon. But maybe there actually are things that we can rediscover that are provided by God just out there in nature.
Mm.
I mean, it's very interesting to me because many of the plants that are the most effective, you don't even have to grow in your garden because they are literally things we think of as weeds that grow out there on the side of the road or in my brush. Let's say they are just growing naturally and I don't have to purposely plant them. They're there. And so, for instance, to take a couple of remedies, one of the one that one of the ones I use the most is plantain, which is a weed that we're all trying to kill in our lawns. and and she talks about it too. I have since learned to respect it more because it is extremely effective for all sorts of skin issues. If you have an insect bite, you can just go out and pick a piece of plantain, chew it up a little bit, and then put it on the sting, and it will take the sting away. Um, it is very good for urinary tract health for both men and women. She says, so for Hildegard, she looks at things in that ancient way of the four humors, and especially the idea of warmth and and moisture. And so she says, plantain is warm and dry. Take plantain, extract its juice, filter it, and mix it with wine or honey to make a drink for those suffering from gout. This will cure it. So that's the little blurb that's from St. Hildegard that goes along with the entry for plantain. And also, the ways of extracting the goodness from the plants are very simple. They don't require a lot of work, and they are explained in the book as well. And so I think it's just interesting that something like that is just so not only readily available, but something that maybe we're kind of fighting against. But maybe we should just say, oh, maybe God is giving us a lot of this for a good reason.
Right, right. And a lot of our modern medicine, I think, are kind of you can trace back to these things. It's
Oh,
been
absolutely.
history's been lost, but you probably it's definitely based in this sort of natural substances that we have all around us. And there are also, Layla, recipes as well. Are these for
Yes.
regular dishes, or give us one or two of your favorite recipes?
Yes, so some of them are soups, some of them are, Hildegard was very big on simply observing the patient and saying, like, again, does this patient seem to be suffering from too much moisture or not enough? Is the patient too dry? Is the patient warm, or does the patient need to be warmed up? And so a lot of the recipes address those issues. And one that I am definitely going to try is honey-filled iris rhizomes, which are for nervous crises, excessive excitement, palpitations. So you would dig up the iris rhizomes, which is not difficult to do. They're very close to the surface. And many of us in our gardens have irises that need to be divided. So that's not a problem at all. We just go out and yank a few up and then clean them and mix, simmer them, and after we've cleaned them, and then cut them up and add honey and bake. Although I might bake them and then add the honey afterwards so as not to heat the honey up, so to keep the honey's natural goodness properties that are harmed by, if you bake them, they would be taken away. And then though that mixture would help to calm the patient. And so that's an example of a recipe that I think is simple and could be very effective.
So, what do you want people to take away from the book? Is it written for people who already are into this sort of thing, or could just a beginner who knows absolutely nothing about natural remedies, take something away from the book?
Oh, I think it's for both. I think it's for the person who's interested in Saint Hildegard, because I think many people are starting to be more interested in her. I think the experiences of the past 5 years have helped us realize that we do need to recover some of the ancient wisdom, and that she is a person who would help us to do that, to look at health in a different way, to approach the person more holistically and from a perspective of faith, and with especially faith in God that a remedy can be found, and that we can at least make the patient more comfortable and show the patient love using the remedies available to us, such as sunshine, rest, and then the herbs and spices that we would find out in nature. So I think whether you're a beginner or somebody who's very interested in herbal medicine, I think the book has something for that person. And I think that the emphasis on her faith, from a very orthodox point of view, is very helpful, because I think in some ways the whole world of medicinal herbs has somewhat been co-opted by a little bit of a new agey, kind of a vibe that isn't ultimately very helpful, because we have to keep in mind the hierarchy of being, with God at the center and the peak, and that everything has to have reference to him. So, and then again, as I was saying, like just in terms of beauty, of having something beautiful that is also informative, I think that makes the book very valuable. So yeah, I think it's great for everyone.
So, SophiaInstitute.com would be the place to go to get a copy of St. Hildegard's Garden, Recipes and Remedies for Healing Body and Soul. And also your local Catholic bookstore would be a good place to go as well. Anything else you'd like to add, Leila?
No, I think that just about covers it. So people, I also wrote a bit about it on my blog, which is
Yes.
called Like Mother, Like Daughter. And I also write about herbs and remedies and taking care of your own family, taking back healthcare, which most of healthcare consists of nursing care. So taking that back into the home, and being confident that the mother of the family can take care of her children. And then, yeah, the book, I think, will really help us in that endeavor.
So your where can folks find your blog again?
So it's likemotherlikedaughter.org. And I also have a Substack, which is called The School for Housewives. So people can find that if they search my name on Substack. And I also right there, I have another Substack on there. So so yeah, and my husband and I have a podcast called The Home Front. So yeah, we're all over, and really recommend this book,
Very
Hildegard's
good.
Garden.
Leila Lawler, thanks so much for being with us today on Catholic Forum.
Thank
It was
you.
great meeting you, and stay healthy.
Thank you. You too. God bless.
Thanks.